Hey YouTube, how's it going? Welcome back. Alright, I've been debating whether or not to do this video for a moment, for about maybe 5 days, right? Since about maybe Sunday or Monday, right? And also I wind up like getting sick, so that kind of made me stop and postpone the video. And ultimately I think that was a good thing because I had some time to really just marinate on the situation in regards to MoNique and Netflix, and also just MoNique situation in general. And initially, I wasn't going to do a video on this, because I felt like it may not be, kind of like staying on code, right? I was like, okay, maybe I should just stay on code, because, you don't always have to voice your opinion about things that you don't like or things that you disagree with, especially when it pertains to, folks inside the Black community. Okay? That is true, and I do agree with that. However, I do think at this point, MoNique is becoming low-key dangerous. And some people are going to be like, well, isn't that a bit of an exaggeration? Why do you say that? Okay, let me go into this a little bit. I think that MoNique is starting to create divisions within the community. All right. And when you create divisions within the community, whether you are Black or non-Black, I think that you are a threat, especially divisions like this. It's one thing to, expose the coons, right? But I really don't think this is what's popping off here. I don't really think that's happening here as much as people would like to think. That's the thing too, because people are like, oh, if you don't support MoNique, you're like automatically a coon, a coonette, a Uncle Tom, a Aunt Jemima, a slave, right? And I'm like, wait a minute. No, 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 no. And by the way, all these names being thrown around like, slave and Aunt Jemima and Uncle Tom and Coon, all this stuff, right? But who's up here practically begging Netflix to recognize her worth and to pay her money? Who's on a campaign practically begging for white acceptance, or acceptance from a white corporation, payment and money from a white corporation? That is low-key slave shit. And just because we don't automatically support her, and jump to support her, it doesn't mean that, we, and I include myself because I don't automatically jump. I'm looking at the situation here. I'm not automatically jumping to support. And part of the reason that I'm not doing that is because I know that we as Black people can be very emotional. And other groups of people, including Black people, know this. That's how we get manipulated, right? More recently, the Barack Obama presidency. They did that with us. They manipulated us. They played on our emotions, used trigger words like slavery, civil rights violations, racism, racial profiling, etc., 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 right? These type of words that, as a Black person, does trigger an emotional response from you, right? Who may, those type of words may, put you in like a defensive mode or put you in a fearful mode, etc. And that's how we get played by like a lot of groups of people. And historically, I think that's how we've been played. And where I'm coming from with this is like, we have to stop, like as a community, we have to stop letting ourselves get played like this and being used by other people when they want numbers, when they want Black support. I think that we as a community need, when people do this, we gotta, go through their receipts, right? We gotta vet these people. We gotta go through their receipts and make sure they're on the up and up, because if they're not, we can end up being used. And we have to stop being used. Stop getting played, you know? You know. And I even wrote down some talking points that I want to talk about, and go through, a few, right? One thing that I notice is it tends to be like arguments based on logic and arguments based on emotion. People coming from logic tend to be hesitant to support MoNique, or either are not really down with supporting MoNique. The emotional arguments tend to be people who are down and supportive of MoNique and her boycott of Netflix. Personally, I think we can use a combination of both, but I think using just emotion, that's how we're going to get played, because they know how we are, and I, like I said before in the previous video, please be aware of these insta-woke Negroes. I have nothing personally against MoNique. I have supported MoNique in my viewership and in my dollars. And with my dollars, rather. I have nothing personally against MoNique, but I do think that she has sort of dug this hole for herself. And I think that MoNique needs to find a way out of this hole by herself. Black people didn't put her into this hole. She put herself into this hole, right? All of a sudden, Insta-woke Negro wants to come out when, the money ain't coming in no more. The parts aren't coming in like they used to. The money and the parts, in the work, rather, like they're not coming in like they used to. So all of a sudden, Insta-woke Negro, talking about these slavery metaphors, possibly want to quote like famous black activists, and it's just like, shouldn't we see through this already? Shouldn't we already see through this? We've been down this road many a times, and at this point now, it's like we got to start looking at the community. Like, is there something wrong with us? Are we're either like crazy or stupid? Especially, just think about it. If you had a friend who did the same, who got by the same trick again and again and again, wouldn't you? Like, you ain't learned your lesson yet. Wouldn't you side eye that? Like, what's up with that? Like, what's up with you? Right? And low key, I do think that MoNique could possibly be suffering from like possibly a midlife crisis, perhaps, or like menopause. No shade to women. Menopause, or possibly a mental issue, or a combination of all three. Right? I know that MoNique has been through some things in her life as far as her family is concerned. So I don't know. I'll get into that a little later in this video. MoNiques Awards, right? MoNique said that she's like the most decorated comedian alive. And she's using that as like a bargaining chip for her Netflix deal, or she was. And the thing is, I think that MoNique played herself with that comment, because a lot of people are like, like the fuck? And I guess technically, if you add up her awards versus other people's awards, perhaps, I believe so. But the thing is, a lot of these awards that she has, most of them are for Precious. No shade to that, but I'm just saying most of them are for Precious, which is a drama. And also, a lot of those awards don't hold any weight in the industry. Like a lot of these, like the Dallas Fort Worth Award for acting or something like that. Like awards like that, like the Hartford, Connecticut Award for drama, stuff like that. Like a lot of these awards don't hold any weight, and she's using these awards, primarily these white awards, to justify to this, massive Netflix why she should get more money, right? Because she ain't using the black awards. She's talking about her Oscar. She ain't talking about her BET awards or her NAACP awards. She's using these white awards to, this white validation that she got to make her case to massive Netflix, right? But talking about we slaves, right? We slaves, we coons, Uncle Tom's, Aunt Jemima's, but you using this white validation that you got and begging massive Netflix for a paycheck and using these white awards to justify it. But we coons. Okay. All right. And let's talk for a moment about MoNique on The View with Whoopi Goldberg. Pretty much that interaction there. I think Whoopi Goldberg was coming from a good place. It may have sound a little harsh, but I think ultimately Whoopi was coming from a good place in her advice that she's given to MoNique both on and off camera. Basically, I think Whoopi had told her, like, just like do the promotion and make sure that, bring your family along with you for the promotion, right? And just turn it into a family vacation on, Lionsgate's dime. But MoNique wasn't really feeling that. And, I understand where MoNique's coming from in that situation where she feels like she should get money. Like she wasn't under contract, right? So she did not violate any contracts, Technically, MoNique was in the right. And, they couldn't come and sue her because she had no contract with Lionsgate to promote the film. Her contract was with Lee Daniels, and she did fulfill that contract. And MoNique and, her husband, daddy, manager, Sydney, they wanted MoNique to receive payment for the promotion that she did in Cannes, or the Cannes Film Festival in France. They wanted money for that. And I guess they weren't paying money. They weren't coming up with the money. So MoNique and her husband, manager, daddy, were just like, nah, we ain't fucking with it. And I get them on that because it's like, hey, it's like we already got lowballed with like the payment, $50,000 for like a hit movie like Precious, right? We got lowballed. So it's like, y'all just trying to just get all that you can get out of her for little or nothing. So I understand that, where she's coming from with that. But you didn't do yourself any favors with that, though, because when people read the stories in the news and other people in the industry read the story and got the story, it was like MoNique didn't promote Precious. Not MoNique was not under contract to promote Precious, therefore she did not promote Precious. So when other people are looking to work with you, they're taking that into consideration that, oh, she doesn't promote her projects. Even though that's not entirely true. We know that MoNique does promote her projects, but that's how other people are going to read it in and outside of the industry. And also, a quick shout out to Wanda Smith from V103. And for those of you who may not know what V103 is, it's like a R&B, hip hop, urban, black radio station based in Atlanta, Georgia. And Wanda Smith is one of the hosts of VJ or DJ. I don't know if she's a DJ, but she's a host on V103 shows like Ryan Cameron in the morning with Wanda Smith, and also Frankie and Wanda in the morning. But Wanda Smith also brought up a great point, right? Wanda Smith said think about all this promotion and, this media promo that MoNique's doing recently, right? She's been on Sway in the Morning. She's been on The View. She's been on Tom Joyner Morning Show. She's been on, I think, Yvette something. She's like one of those like pro-black YouTubers. She's been on her internet show. She was supposed to go on the Queen's Court before that whole thing happened, right? Then she was on The Breakfast Club. And also MoNique has talked about this on her own radio podcast show, MoNique and Sydney's Open Relationship, which I did a video about and gave them a little shout out, just so folks can check them out and check out what's popping out over there. So MoNique has done all this promotion, for done all this promo and this press against Netflix, right? Low key, giving them free promotion, right? And Wanda Smith said, what if MoNique had just did all this for Precious? Would she even be in this situation? All right, that's something to think about too. Because notice she's doing she ain't getting paid for this. She's not getting paid for any of this. She's doing this all free of charge and giving Netflix full free promotion. But has she done this for Precious over when they called her to go over the cans? MoNique wouldn't be in this situation now. So it's like, you don't want to promote this movie that you in, but you want to promote this boycott of Netflix. The movie that you got paid for, you won't promote. But this Netflix deal that did not go through, you want to promote Netflix on the low and talk about boycotting and stuff, right? Also, according to MoNique, she said that her and Whoopi after The View was over. Like, MoNique and Whoopi had went to Whoopi's dressing room and they had a talk with each other. And Whoopi basically said something, to the extent of like, her husband, MoNique's husband is the issue. Her manager, her husband is the issue because he's like her husband, daddy, manager. And MoNique, MoNique, I knew she wasn't going to be feeling that because she's, very much in love with her husband, daddy, manager, Pam. And she wasn't feeling it. And I think she said something like, on her podcast show, she was talking about this. And she said, oh, where's yours? Right. And then she also addressed that to other women in general who, I guess, have issues with her husband, manager, daddy, pimp. Like, oh, where's your husband? And she'd be like, oh, they ain't got no husbands, And it's like this. I think Cheryl Underwood put it really well in an interview she did with The Breakfast Club a while ago. She said something to the extent of like, basically she's not going to let a man, come in to her life, marry her, and manage her. It's just not going to go down like that for her, right? Basically, I think Cheryl's going to want the man to have something of his own popping off. Then he can marry her, And I understand where Cheryl is coming from with that. Haven't women learned their lesson about this already? Wendy Williams about to go through it. Mary J. Blige done went through it. Jill Scott done went through it. About letting these dudes who ain't really got much of nothing come into your situation, start managing, and then when the love goes wrong, then all of a sudden they suing. Y'all going through divorce court. They suing for half. You gotta fight for your money. You paying alimony now. I know Cheryl like, nah, I ain't getting played like that. Nah, shit. Nuh-uh. So I feel Cheryl Underwood on that. And really, these dudes who be managing, you, shit, y'all women need to tell these dudes just to manage to blow your back out. Shit, make them. That's what they need to be managing to do when it comes to you and your situation. You just managed to do that. Shit. And also, what are these dudes bringing to the table? That's another thing. MoNique's husband, daddy, manager, pimp, Sydney Hicks, right? Like, I did a little Google schmoogle, and I couldn't really find that much about him. I don't think he really had that much popping off prior to linking up with MoNique. He said he has closed 7 and 8 figure deals. He said that on their podcast show recently. But I'm like, okay. But why ain't you closing these deals for MoNique though? I mean, and also I think MoNique and her team really need to have a meeting with each other. Just sit down, have a group meeting, talk about what does MoNique want. Like, what do we as a team want? Do we want to get off the blacklist and go back into this industry, or do we want to just totally uproot this industry and flip it on its head, or just do our own thing? Like, what? Because that's the thing with this Netflix boycott too. It's like, what's the end goal? What's the ultimate goal with this Netflix boycott? Is it to have Netflix accept MoNique and pay her what she feels that she's due? You know, what she feels she's worth? Or is it to just have all, black folks leave Netflix, right? And also, again, like, it's like MoNique is asking people to jump the Netflix ship, right? But the thing is, there's no lifeboats. It's like when black people are jumping ship, but there's no other ship to jump to. So many people are going to end up jumping into the water. Many of these people do not have life jackets. Like, some of these people can't stay afloat without Netflix, low key. So it's like you can't really jump from the pot to the fire. I know Netflix could be a bad situation. It could be a bad situation, but it's like, but you asking people to jump from a bad situation to a worse situation though. And like, there's no other alternative right now. It's not like MoNique is saying like, hey, leave Netflix and come to like, Blackflix. Like, there's no like Blackflix popping off right now. And she's not promoting that. And also, while MoNique is doing all this promo and talking about things that happened 5 and 10 years ago, like, shouldn't she have a project that she should be promoting? She should. She should be like, hey, Netflix did me wrong, did me dirty. I got my own comedy special coming up. Watch it. Buy it. Download it, pay for it. But she's not promoting anything. She's not. No. She's promoting Netflix. That's what she's promoting. And that's the thing too with this management. I'm like, y'all ain't doing it. Well, let me stop. It's not like I've never managed anything, but from what Sydney says that his credentials is common sense. I have common sense, so I think if that makes him a manager, then I'm a manager, right? Okay. But let's sort of get into this whole Breakfast Club part that comes up. And people were like, oh, MoNique got Leonard, right? Oh, she got it. She got Charlemagne. I was like, not really. Not really. Honestly, I think Charlemagne was being respectful. I honestly think he was. Because he could have went really, it went really ignorant. And, because Charlemagne can definitely run circles around people when it comes to, like, jokes and stuff. He could have really took it there and got really ignorant and got down to her level. But I will commend Charlemagne in this particular interview here. I think that he did take the high road on a lot of this stuff, actually. And I know people have issues with Charlemagne, and rightfully so, right? I've called out Charlemagne about that Amara La Negra interview. Other people have issues with him just in general, right? I get it. Those are valid, but I'm just saying for this particular situation here between him and MoNique in that interview, I think that he did take the high road. He didn't take shots at her. He just kept it to the facts. He just kept it to, the facts and the numbers, the stats. And MoNique was dodging questions, not answering questions straight up, using a question to answer a question, which is a strategy of deflection as well, which I didn't like. And in that interview, MoNique was asked could she sell out arenas, and she was like, dodging that question. But on her podcast show, she had brought that question back up, and she said that, like, no, I can't sell out arenas. And then she was like, did Richard Pryor sell out arenas? Did Eddie Murphy sell out arenas? I'm like, MoNique, you don't do that. Don't play yourself like that. You're comparing yourself to people who are like iconic, people who are legendary, people who have paved the way, people whose people still check for to this day. People still watch that Eddie Murphy stand-up special he did back in the 1980s till this day. Delirious, I think it's called. People still check for Richard Pryor stand-ups till this day. And he's long gone, and he still lives on because of his strong legacy. MoNique, you ain't got it like that. I'm sorry, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but you ain't on that level like that. You playing yourself with these comparisons because you don't measure up to them. And she's saying like, oh, Richard Pryor said that he called me Mrs. Pryor. And she's like using that as like a legitimate claim to be on the level of Richard Pryor. Like, where's the logic, the reasoning, the common sense? Sydney, apparently, since you seem to have so much common sense, because that's your credentials. And then on the Breakfast Club, Angela Yee had posed a few questions, and then MoNique had said something like, oh, we experience discrimination and pay inequalities, Angela. And, Angela did not really take it there and agree with her. She just kind of tried to keep it on subject and on topic, because low-key, that's sort of like a strategy, underhanded strategy. Like, she's trying to get Angela Yee on her side, right, to go against her co-workers. And MoNique's contract was for potential Netflix contract was for about $500,000. Personally, I think that MoNique should have been offered at least $1 million. I do think she was lowballed. I think she should have renegotiated. But I don't know. Also, I don't know how much money she actually wants. That's the thing, too. That was never answered. And Leonard, Charlemagne, he asked that question, and they couldn't answer it. And that's not really a question, because at one point she was like, oh, y'all consider me a legend, so shouldn't I get what the legends are getting? And the legends, are getting $20 million contracts. So I'm thinking, okay, you want a $20 million contract. But then they flipped it and be like, we didn't ask for $20 million. And I'm like, but you're leading people to make that assumption, though. It's like this weird playing the fence thing, too, which is dishonest. It's like, like I said in the beginning of this video, we getting played. We can't get played. And I'll say in this Breakfast Club interview that MoNique did, I think that DJ Envy probably had the best point in this entire interview. And some people are like, that's a first. But he did. He really did. Which was basically, Netflix knows that your name is dirt in the industry. Therefore, why would Netflix as a business offer you top dollar? Considering that all this negativity and dirt is associated with the name of MoNique as an entertainer in the industry, why would they offer you a top dollar though? It's not right, but that's just business. And MoNique was like, that's what we're trying to get people to see, that it is not right. But I really think that that is a personal situation, though, not a racial and gender bias situation, though. And also, I think that this boycott probably should have been a bit more specific and said, black women comedians, right? Instead of just saying black women, or women of color, rather. But of course, they do that for the numbers, that's for the numbers. And again, that's something else too. It's like, do you want to be Malcolm X or Martin Luther King, MoNique and Sydney? Do y'all want to be Malcolm X or Martin Luther King? Because in 1 minute, it seemed like y'all want to assimilate into the system and just, get equal treatment and fair compensation and all, which is not anything that is asking too much. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, if you're doing all this, do you really think people are going to let you in to the industry, though, if you're going about it this way? So I don't know. That's a bit of a disconnect that I'm having. I don't know if they want to be Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. I don't know. Also, off camera, at the Breakfast Club, MoNique has said that little thing that some people are like, yeah, she got him, right? And she had said something to the extent of like, oh, Charlemagne, like, she said, like, on Birth of a Nation, there was this slave who walked his wife over to the master to be raped or sexually assaulted, to have sex with him. And she said, you're that slave, Charlemagne. And Charlemagne, he took the high road even with that. And he just said, God bless you, MoNique. So obviously MoNique was feeling some type of a way about Charlemagne, right? And I think it has to do partly with like Donkey of the Day, which I think she took to heart. I don't know why. Tons of people across the spectrum have received Donkey of the Day. And sometimes rightfully so. Sometimes it's like, hey, why are they getting Donkey of the Day? But for some reason, she seemed to have really taken that to heart. And some people are like, oh, it's because she's, a big fat black woman. And people are saying that Charlemagne did that. I'm perhaps saying that maybe that's why she's taking it some sort of a way. Even though when I heard Donkey of the Day associated with her name, I didn't jump to the assumption that they did it because, or Charlemagne did it because she was big, fat, and black. I don't think anybody did. I guess at least any black person did. Anyone who knows the Breakfast Club in that segment, I don't think anyone jumped to that conclusion, right? And also, I think she should have just been straight up if it was about that. It's like, hey, did you call me a donkey because I'm, a large black plus size woman? I could respect that more and just had a conversation based on that versus the nice nasty thing and the passive aggressive thing. I don't like that. So if that was the issue, I really wish she would have just been straight up about it. Because Charlemagne was being respectful. And I'm sure if that was the issue, they could have been able to come to some sort of a resolve. Also, Wanda Sykes was offered a deal with Netflix. They offered her, I guess, around $250,000, I think. More or less, probably less. And Wanda Sykes tweeted about that, you know. And I think in that tweet, she was like, you know, hint, hint to MoNique, you know, hey, I found just a better home. Hashtag Apex. So I think while Wanda Sykes does understand where MoNique is coming from, she's like, hey, you know, perhaps just move on to a better offer. Unfortunately for MoNique, I don't think there were better offers. That was brought up in the Breakfast Club too. And to MoNique's credit, I do think she answered honestly, where basically there are no other offers. It was a roundabout answer, you know, talking about the blacklist and the blackball and the low ball and all that stuff. But there are no other offers. So Netflix is taking that into consideration too. No one else is really checking for you like that. So why should we offer you the top of the top when we know that you ain't really popping like that? That's what we do as consumers, right? When we go to like buy stuff, we look for sales. We don't look to buy things at top dollar. We look to get the sale, get the discount. Use coupons if you have to, you know. So I think that MoNique, I don't know, it's very emotionally charged. A lot of emotion in this argument, in this situation here. And also, Tiffany Haddish. Congratulations to Tiffany Haddish because she has received a deal with Netflix to star in an animated series. She's going to be voicing, I believe, one of the main characters, and she's going to be paid about $800,000 for doing that, for voiceover work. And for voiceover work, that is really good, actually. Some people are like, they lowball her, but the thing is, in this industry, when it comes to voiceover work, you don't get paid like a lot of money like the actors, the live actors do, typically. Unless you are on a show that's really popping like that. Like, you know, Family Guy, when it was like really popping. Perhaps you may. The Simpsons, you know, but overall, in voiceover work though, you don't get paid like a lot of money like that. You get paid probably like $50,000 for like a movie, unless you're like a really big name star, which at this point Tiffany Haddish ain't, but she's still getting good money though for voiceover work though. And I believe probably like $50,000 per like a movie, or like $50,000 for like a season, right? And I heard, you know, when voiceover actors like the voice of Babe asked for more pay for the sequel, they replaced her because like, we ain't gotta pay you. You know, it's easier to replace voiceover talent than on air live talent. So people are like looking at this Netflix deal and comparing it to like stand-up deals and the whole Amy Schumer thing, which, you know, to go on record, I think that MoNique has more to offer than Amy Schumer does. I do. Unfortunately, more people check for Amy Schumer than MoNique. I don't know these people, but, you know, obviously people are checking for Amy Schumer. To the point where she can negotiate deals like she got, right? And had those crappy movies that she got. But, you know, a whole crowd of people went to a stadium to see Amy Schumer at Madison Square Garden twice, you know? And as well, Chris Rock, he's had like a lot of momentum in the comedy circuit doing stadium tours, I believe, as did Dave Chappelle. Even with the whole Comedy Central issue, he was able to bypass all that and have something popping for himself, so that when Netflix came a calling, he had like a lot of bargaining chips, right? Because he was in demand. And that's the thing. When you are in demand, you can make demands, MoNique. Unfortunately, MoNique is not in demand, so she cannot make demands. And I feel like a lot of this is really common sense. And I'm like, when this emotional stuff gets into the mix, common sense goes out the window for a lot of people. And that's why I say, like, we can do like a mixture of both emotion and logic, but we can't just go totally based off the emotional part though, because it'll have you doing some crazy things. Yeah. And MoNique on her podcast show, her and her husband, as I said before, they have a podcast show called MoNique and Sydney's Open Relationship. I personally, I don't know, I'm suspicious of her husband, Sydney Hicks. I don't know, something about this situation is making me suspicious of him. Because I feel like he may low-key be preying on MoNique. They've been together they've been married since like 2006. So they've been going strong for a while, assumably. And if MoNique has a good thing in her life, then I have no problem with that. You know, she got a good man in her life. I'm happy for her. All right. But here's the thing where I'm coming from, though. He's her manager. MoNique said it was her idea. He said that he didn't want to be her manager. But it just got to a point where, like, she really needed him to step up, and he stepped up. I think that MoNique may be sort of like easy prey because of the things that she's experienced in her life and the things that she is experiencing in her life, right? For instance, her and her family are not on good terms. That's what happened with the whole Oprah Winfrey situation. Oprah had her family on her show where she did not pass that by MoNique. She only passed by her brother being on the show, not her entire family being on the show. And MoNique had confided in Oprah about the issues that she was going through with her family. And she took advantage of that, seemingly. And MoNique, she wasn't feeling it, and rightfully so, right? But MoNique doesn't have a good relationship with her family, nor with her mother, especially with her mother, right? Also, I believe that MoNique and her first son are not on good terms. I remember hearing something about that. So that's something too. So when Sydney's comes into the relationship or comes into the picture, it's like MoNique's kind of like at a place where she might be somewhat lonely, you know, don't have anyone in her corner who she really feels is down for her like that. And, you know, Sydney probably came in saying all the right things, saying all the right things. Oh, you a big, beautiful black woman, you know. And also, it's like, what was Sydney doing before he managed MoNique, or managed to get her career to this point? I don't know. I don't know. Because she said that her and her family has taken a hit financially. I'm like, what about what Sydney, what he bringing to the table, though? Does he have other clients? Probably not. Because that's the thing, too. It's like, in a situation like with Tamar Braxton and Vincent Herbert, I feel like that's more of a legit management situation. Because Vince did have like a long record of that, like managing and being in the industry and all that good stuff before him and Tamar hooked up. And even if him and Tamar divorce, he would still have that momentum in his career without Tamar. His whole career does not revolve around Tamar. So I feel like that is more of a legitimate managing situation, even though that can get tricky too when you mix in business and pleasure together. But I can understand Tamar perhaps gravitating towards Vincent being a manager because she's saying, oh, you manage this, person, this person, like, hey, get something popping from me in my career, which he has, I believe, Y'all women, y'all black women especially, y'all better learn out there. Take this as a lesson. Shit, don't be letting these niggas come up into situation and fuck everything up. Like I told you before, tell them, tell them to manage to, tell them to manage to blow your back out. That's what you need to be having these dudes manage to do. Sure. Um, Also, before I go, I just want to bring up one more thing. The Colin Kaepernick protest against police brutality has sometimes been brought up in comparison with MoNique and her protest against Netflix. While I do think that there are some similarities, I do think that there are some major differences, okay? One major difference is that Colin's protest does not come off as completely self-serving. As far as we know, Colin Kaepernick did not have a run-in with the law. As far as we know, he may have had like a run-in, perhaps a friend of his may have had a run-in. We don't know. But as far as we know, it didn't come off as being self-serving. And I think that's part of the reason why people have supported Colin Kaepernick as strongly as they have. You know, protesting on his behalf to get signed to a team, you know, buying his jersey, and also speaking positively about him, right? Also, the Colin Kaepernick protest did not really cause division within the community. It exposed coons. That's a difference. There's a difference now. It exposed coon people in and outside of the community, right? Also, Colin Kaepernick did not name names and talk about private conversations that he had with this player, this owner, that owner. He just kept it to the protest. If you didn't want to participate, he did not shame you. He did not call you a slave, a coon, a Aunt Jemima, a Uncle Tom. None of that. He just kept it to the protest. Because if he had done those things, the media would have used that as a way not to to support the protest. You know, they were thinking so many different reasons not to support this protest. The mainstream media, you know, white people, right? So they had to come up with the BS about the military, you know, and support our troops. Even though Colin Kaepernick took the knee instead of sitting because the military. Some military people had advised him that that would be a better way to go about it. So it's like you're not against the military when you do this. And that's why he did that, or did it that way. Also, Colin Kaepernick has received, you know, recognition from mainstream press. You know, like the ESPN, you know, Athlete of the Year award because of this protest. You know, Time Magazine's Person of the Moment, GQ's Person of the Moment. He's received a few accolades from mainstream media, you know, who, you know, perhaps want to be on the right side of the issue, you know. And I believe that Colin Kaepernick may go down in the history books because of this. Colin Kaepernick did expose a lot with this protest, and he didn't do a whole lot of talking either. I mean, he did do a press conference to address the situation when he was asked why he was taking a knee. He did do a press conference and has spoken here and there, but he really has just kept it to the issue and to the protest. And people, you know, he never asked people for support either. That's the thing. People just thought it was a worthwhile cause and lent their support to it. He never came out and asked other people to support his cause, you know, or to fight his battles. Other people have taken it upon themselves because they probably felt that, you know, this seemed like someone who did a selfless move, you know, was about the community, etc., etc. So let's support him. But with MoNique, it wasn't like that, though. MoNique, it's like it caused division in the community, not just exposing coons, but real division here. You know, it comes off as a lot more self-serving Because what triggered this was something that happened with her in her career, not what happened to the next person. And people are not as quick to support MoNique because they feel that it may be self-serving. MoNique has called people names on the low, being nice, nasty, being passive aggressive. She has talked about private conversations that she has had with many people. It's just very messy, very divisive. And if you have a messy, divisive person in the community, that's a threat. I know we can't all agree on everything, but when you're starting to make these divisions with people, then I got to look at you a certain way. You know, it's like that person in high school, usually that female, that low-key female. Some males kind of do it too, but kind of like stir up shit, you know. And life is just like high school, honestly, because a lot of people do tend to have a high school mentality about things. Still stirring up shit, you know. But I'm going to bring this video to a close. I had a lot to say, so this is my 2 cents. You know, my pro-black, conscious, woke 2 cents about this situation with MoNique and Netflix. Let me know what you guys think about MoNique and Netflix in this situation. You agree with me? You disagree with me? You're kind of on the fence? Let me know. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.